My family used me as free babysitter for 7 years, but when an accident left me unable to use my hands, a stranger did more for me than they ever did, and my response left them speechless. I'm 23 years old. I work in office administration, and it's been like 6 months since I talked to most of my family, and honestly, I never thought I'd get to this point. I guess I should start from the beginning. So you understand why I basically cut ties with my siblings, and why I don't feel even a little bit bad about it. Even though my dad keeps insisting that I'm the one destroying the family. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. Kevin is 35, Jennifer is 30, Kelly is 28, and I'm 23. We grew up in a pretty normal household, nothing spectacular. My parents got divorced when I was like 14, and my mom moved to another state for work. So I basically grew up with my dad. My older siblings were already married or living on their own by then, and I was the only one left at home. The thing is that when they started having kids, they automatically assumed I was going to be the family's official babysitter. And honestly, at first it didn't bother me because, they were my nieces and nephews and I loved them a lot. Jennifer had 2 kids, Kelly had 2 as well, and Kevin had 1. So from when I was like 16 until recently, I basically spent all my weekends and most of my afternoons after school or work taking care of kids. And when I say taking care, I don't mean hanging out with them occasionally. I mean changing diapers, making meals, helping with homework, taking them to the park, bathing them, putting them to bed, everything. My siblings would show up like 11 at night or sometimes the next day, and I just did it because, well, we were family, and that's how family is supposed to work, right? They never paid me. Not once. Kevin is the one with the most money of all of them. He has a construction business that's doing really well, lives in a huge house, and drives a brand new BMW, but it never occurred to him to offer me even $20 for watching his kid for an entire weekend. Jennifer and Kelly didn't either, and they asked me for help constantly, like 2 or 3 times a week minimum. Sometimes they'd say thank you, sometimes not even that. And I kept doing it because I thought that's how I showed I was a good sister, that I was reliable, that I cared about the family. Things went on like this for years. I finished high school, started working, and I was still the go-to babysitter. My friends would invite me out and I'd have to say no because I was watching the kids. I missed a ton of opportunities to do normal things that people my age do because I was always available for my family. And looking back, I should have seen it coming. I should have realized they only valued me when I was useful to them. About 9 months ago, I had a horrible accident. I was on my bike, on my way to work, and a guy in a truck didn't see me and hit me. I woke up in the hospital with both my hands completely destroyed. I needed surgery on both of them, and they told me I wasn't going to be able to use my hands normally for at least 6 months. Maybe more. I also hurt my left leg so bad that I couldn't walk without crutches, and the doctors explained that the recovery was going to be long and difficult. I was terrified, obviously, because how was I supposed to do anything without being able to use my hands? I couldn't cook, I couldn't dress myself, I couldn't even go to the bathroom without help at first. It was humiliating and painful, and worst of all, I was completely alone. My dad came to see me the first day in the hospital, stayed like 2 hours, and then said he had to leave because he had work. Jennifer came once, stayed 30 minutes, spent most of the time on her phone and told me she hoped I'd recover soon. Kelly never showed up at the hospital. She sent me a text saying she couldn't leave the kids. Kevin sent flowers. That was it. My mom called from where she lives, which is like 5 hours away, and told me she would have come but she had an important presentation at work and that she'd call me later. And later turned out to be 2 weeks after that. When I got out of the hospital after 4 days, I had to call an Uber to take me to my apartment because no one was available to pick me up. The driver had to help me carry my stuff up and get inside because I couldn't carry anything. He left me at my apartment, and when he closed the door, I sat on the living room floor and cried because I realized I was going to have to go through this completely alone. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I couldn't do anything by myself. I had to order delivery for every meal because I couldn't cook. My neighbor Susan, who I barely knew, was the one who helped me more than anyone. She's like 65 years old, super nice, and when she found out about my situation, she started bringing me homemade food like 3 times a week. She helped me do small things around the apartment, took me to doctor's appointments, even helped me shower the first few weeks because I couldn't do it alone without getting my hand bandages wet. Susan did more for me in those months than my entire family combined. And that hurt me in a way I can't even explain well. My siblings knew perfectly well what state I was in. My dad knew, everyone knew, and they basically disappeared. Jennifer would text me every now and then asking how I was, and when I'd respond with details about how difficult everything was, she'd send me a heart emoji and change the subject. Kelly called me once to complain that her husband wasn't helping her with the kids, and when I told her I needed help too, she went silent for a moment and then said she had to go. 3 months went by like this. 3 months where I was completely alone dealing with recovery, with constant pain, with the frustration of not being able to do the most basic things for myself. And in all that time, no one from my family offered to help me. Not once. They didn't come visit me. They didn't bring me food. They didn't offer to take me to physical therapy. Nothing. And the craziest thing is that during all those years I spent taking care of their kids, putting my life aside to be available for them, it never occurred to them that maybe I might need help someday too. It was sometime in the 3rd month that something clicked in my head. I was sitting in my apartment, still in pain, still struggling to do simple things, and I realized they only valued me when I was useful to them, when I could watch their kids for free, when I could cancel my plans to help them, when I was available 24/7. That's when I mattered. But the moment I needed help, when I was the one who needed something from them, they disappeared. And that made me angry in a way I'd never felt before. Kelly's call came like a month later, when I was just starting to walk without crutches but still had my hands in therapy. She called me on a Friday afternoon, and the first thing she said was, "Hey, I know you've been busy with your recovery and all that, but I need you to watch the kids this weekend. My husband and I have a wedding and we can't find a babysitter." And I just stood there, phone in hand, completely incredulous. I told her, "Kelly, I'm still in therapy. I can't watch kids. I can't even use my hands properly yet." And she said, "Well, but you're better now, right? I mean, you're walking and everything. I'm sure you can handle a weekend with them. It's not that hard. It's not that hard." Those were her exact words. Like the last months of pain and frustration and loneliness meant nothing. Like I'd been on vacation or something and now I had to get back to work. I told her no, that I couldn't and I wasn't going to do it. She went silent for a moment and then said, "Wow, I can't believe you're being so selfish after everything the family has done for you." And I literally laughed. Because what was she talking about? What had the family done for me exactly? Sent me flowers once and empty texts? I told her exactly that. I said, "Kelly, what did the family do for me?" Because when I was in the hospital, no one came to see me for more than half an hour. When I got out and couldn't do anything for myself, no one offered to help me. When I spent 3 months completely alone and suffering, the only person who helped me was my 5-year-old neighbor who didn't even know me well. So tell me, what did the family do for me? And she got all defensive and said that everyone was busy, that they had their own lives and responsibilities, that they couldn't drop everything to take care of me. And I told her, "Exactly. You couldn't drop everything to help me, but I was supposed to drop everything always to help you guys, right?" The conversation ended with her yelling at me that I was acting like a child and that the family was going to know how selfish I was being. I hung up and blocked her number, and it was liberating, honestly. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control of my own life, but obviously that wasn't the end. Like 2 weeks later, my dad called me and said we needed to talk, that this whole situation was getting out of hand and we needed to resolve it as a family. I agreed to meet with them, basically because I thought that maybe, just maybe, they were going to understand my point of view and apologize for abandoning me when I needed them most. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen at all. We met at a cafe near my dad's house. Jennifer, Kelly, Kevin, and my dad were there. And from the moment I sat down, I could feel the hostility. Jennifer started by saying they were all very worried about me, that I was acting very strange lately, and that it wasn't like me to be so cold with the family. And I said, "Really? You're worried about me now? Where was that concern when I was alone in the hospital? Where was it when I couldn't even dress myself?" Kelly interrupted and said, "We'd already talked about that everyone had their reasons for not being able to be there, that I was being immature by continuing to bring it up, and that's when I really lost my patience. I told them I had spent years, literally years, being their free babysitter, that I had sacrificed my social life, my opportunities, my time, everything to be available for them and their kids, and that the moment I needed something from them, they left me completely alone. I asked them if they really didn't see anything wrong with that, if they really thought I was the one who was wrong. Kevin, who had been quiet this whole time, finally spoke and said yes. Maybe they hadn't been as present as they should have been during my recovery, but that didn't mean I had to cut ties with the whole family and refuse to help with the kids. And that's when I realized they were never going to understand. They weren't there to apologize or to acknowledge they'd treated me badly. They were there to make me feel guilty and convince me to go back to being the convenient babysitter I'd always been. I told them I wasn't going to keep being their free babysitter, that I wasn't going to keep putting my life aside for them, and that if they wanted a relationship with me, it had to be a real relationship, not one where they only looked for me when they needed me. Jennifer laughed and said, "So basically, you're giving us an ultimatum. How mature of you." And I said, "Call it whatever you want. But that's how things are going to be from now on." I got up to leave and Kelly yelled, "The kids miss you. Doesn't that matter to you?" And I stopped and turned around and told her, "Of course it matters to me. I love them, but you're using the kids as an excuse to manipulate me, and that's not okay." And I left. I thought that would be the end. But like 2 weeks later, Kevin called me. And this time he sounded different, less aggressive, more tired. He told me he needed to talk to me, that there were things I needed to know. I agreed to meet with him just because he sounded genuinely serious. We met at his house and he told me something that basically confirmed all my suspicions. He told me that, after the meeting at the cafe, Jennifer and Kelly had been making plans to completely cut me off from access to the kids, and that they were going to tell the kids I was sick, or that I'd moved far away, or any excuse so they wouldn't look for me anymore. Kevin said he didn't agree with that he thought it was cruel and manipulative, but that Jennifer and Kelly were really angry and felt they needed to punish me somehow for setting boundaries. He asked me if there was any way to fix things, and I honestly told him I didn't know how to fix something that was broken from the beginning. I thanked him for telling me the truth, and we parted on relatively good terms, I guess. But the situation with Jennifer got even worse like a month later. She called me at 11 at night, crying, saying her oldest daughter had a high fever and she needed to take her to the hospital. But her husband was on a business trip, and she didn't have anyone to watch her younger son. She asked me, literally begged, me, to go to her house to watch the kid while she went to the hospital. And I know this sounds horrible, but I told her no. I told her to call Kelly or ask a neighbor or take the kid with her to the hospital, but that I wasn't going to go. And she yelled at me that I was a terrible person. How could I do this to her when her daughter was sick? That she was never going to forgive me for this. She hung up and I sat there feeling like the worst person in the world, but also knowing I'd done the right thing. Because if I had gone, if I had let them emotionally manipulate me using an emergency, I would have fallen back into the same pattern as always. And I couldn't do that anymore. I found out later through Kevin that the girl was fine, that it was just an infection treated with antibiotics, and that Jennifer had found someone else to watch the kid that night. Jennifer blocked me on everything and told the whole family that I had abandoned her in her time of need. My dad started calling me constantly after that. He'd tell me I needed to be the mature one, that I needed to forgive, that family was the most important thing, and we couldn't continue like this. And I tried to explain to him that it wasn't that simple, that it wasn't just about a fight or a misunderstanding, but about years of being used and then abandoned when I needed help. But he didn't understand it, or didn't want to understand it. He kept saying everyone makes mistakes, that my siblings loved me in their own way, that I was being too hard on them. At some point, I got fed up and told him, "Dad, when I was in the hospital after the accident, where were you? You came one day for 2 hours and then disappeared. Why didn't you help me during my recovery? Why did you let a neighbor I barely knew be the only person who was there for me?" And he went quiet for a long moment and then said, "I thought you were fine. I didn't know you needed that much help." And that's when I realized they had never cared enough to ask, to really worry about me beyond the superficial. I decided I needed a clean break. I blocked Jennifer and Kelly on everything: phone, social media, everything. I left Kevin and my dad unblocked because they at least hadn't been actively cruel. But I made it clear I needed space and I wasn't going to tolerate more conversations about reconciling with my sisters. What I did do was get the phone numbers of the kids, or at least the older ones. Charlotte, who is Kelly's daughter, is 12 and has her own phone. And I sent her a message explaining that I hadn't gone anywhere, that I loved her very much, and that if she ever needed anything, she could contact me directly. Charlotte responded and told me her mom had told her I was angry at everyone and didn't want to see the family anymore, but that she missed me and didn't understand what had happened. I explained it to her as simply as I could, without bad-mouthing her mom but being honest, that I'd had a disagreement with the adults in the family about boundaries and respect, and that sometimes those things happen. I told her none of it was her fault and that I would always be available for her. We've been in touch since then. She sends me messages every so often telling me about school and her friends, and that makes me happy. Honestly. But Kelly found out I was talking to Charlotte, and that made her furious. She sent me a physical letter to my apartment, like an actual letter with an envelope and everything, and it was basically 4 pages of her telling me how selfish I was, how immature, how I was destroying the family, how the kids cried for me and it was my fault because I had chosen to walk away. It said that someday I was going to regret this, that I was going to be alone with no one, and then I would understand what it feels like to be abandoned by family. I read the letter once and threw it in the trash, and that was like the last straw. I changed my phone number, only gave the new number to Kevin, my dad, my mom, and Charlotte. I blocked any form of contact Jennifer and Kelly could have with me, and I decided I was going to move forward with my life without them in it. My mom called me like 2 months ago. We'd talked occasionally during all this, but she'd been more or less neutral, probably because she lives far away and isn't as involved in the day-to-day drama. She told me she'd talked to my dad and Kelly, and that she understood I was hurt, but that maybe with time I could consider forgiving and rebuilding the relationship. I honestly told her I didn't know if that was possible, that it wasn't just about forgiving, but about whether they would ever really see what they'd done wrong. And she sighed and said, probably not, that people rarely change that radically, but that she hoped I could find peace with the situation one way or another. And honestly, I think I've already found my peace. Or at least I'm on my way. The last few months have been different. Quiet in a weird way at first, because I was so used to the constant chaos of my family. But now it's a good quiet, if that makes sense. I've been reconnecting with friends I'd stopped seeing because I was always watching kids. I started therapy, which has helped me a ton to process all this and not feel guilty about setting boundaries. I even started dating someone recently, a guy I met at work, and it's weird to have time to do those normal things people my age do. Charlotte sent me a message last week saying she missed me and asking if we could see each other sometime. I told her I'd love to, but that she had to ask her mom first because I didn't want to cause more problems. She said she was going to try to convince her. I don't know if Kelly will allow it. Probably not. But the fact that Charlotte wants to keep in touch with me means more than I can express. I don't know how all this is going to end long term. Maybe someday Jennifer and Kelly will understand why I did what I did. Maybe they'll genuinely apologize and we can rebuild something. Or maybe not. Maybe this is my family now. Kevin, who texts me every now and then asking how I am. My dad, who still expects everything to magically go back to normal. My mom, who's worried from a distance. And Charlotte, who sends me pictures of her new haircut or tells me about her class drama. And honestly, I'm at peace with that. Because I learned something important from all this. Something that took me 23 years and a horrible accident to understand. Family isn't just about blood or about being present when it's convenient. It's about being there when things get difficult, when the person really needs you, when there's nothing to gain from it except the fact that you care. And if that's not there, then what's the point of forcing it, you know? Susan, my neighbor, invited me to dinner the other night. She cooked her famous lasagna that she used to bring me when I was recovering, and we sat and talked for hours about everything and nothing. And at some point, I realized that that genuine connection with someone who chose to care for me without any obligation, that's worth more than years of family ties based only on expectations and convenience. And that's enough for now, I guess.